Who benefits the most from being an early enrollee? Hit that like and subscribe button. Let's do it right now. It is today's tough question, and it's brought to you by our good friend Andy Mason, realestate.com. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so we've got kind of an unofficial list. They're still waiting on some guys to sign some official financial aid letters, but we can go ahead and dive into the list that I feel really confident in. And I want to start with Jimmy. Jim, you've got the list, and I'm going to run through it quickly. As far as transfers, Lance Hurd, Miles Kitzelman, Holden Stage, Jalen McMurray, Gerard McCoy, Jackson Moy, Jacoby Thomas, Eli Purcell, Jamal Wallace, and then the recruits, Mike Matthews, Boo Carter, Jake Merklinger, Braylon Staley, Payton Lewis, Max Anderson, Caleb Beasley, Kellen Lindstrom, William Satterfield, Edwin Spillman, Gage Ginther, Idris Farrak, Marquise Gordy Jr., Jesse Perry, and then we mentioned the transfers. So
it's William Satterwhite, by the way, Dave. Your reflexive Satterfield. Love for Satterfield.
I love Satterfield. William Satterwhite, excuse me. All right, so Jim, out of that group, first of all, I can remember back in the day, about the time that you and I started working together, where if you got one or two midterm enrollees, that was a big deal, right? And now it seems like everybody is coming in. What do you make of it, and how helpful is it to a program that's able to bring these guys in December or January?
I think it's really helpful, and it's helpful not only from the football perspective, but it's also just helpful to get acclimated to the college life, to get your classes started, to get into the right dorm, to just kind of feel comfortable on campus. And I think one reason we're seeing more and more of that is because these freshmen know that they have a chance to play right away. And so they want to go ahead and get their career started. Most people now aren't thinking about finishing out high school and playing on the baseball team in the spring. They're thinking about the future. They're thinking about the NFL. They're thinking of, in my opinion, in a business manner. And so I think that's why they want to get a jump start on college, so that they could get a jump start on perhaps becoming a professional.
No, Caleb, I agree. And when you look at this list of guys, I mean, it's way different from stepping in June or July and being expected to pop pads in August.
Yeah, and also as young guys, when you're really just developing in the program your first year, kind of like a sponge for information, but you may or may not play, it's also a good chance to get ahead on classes too. I mean, I think we've all talked about how, look, there is still, amidst NIL, there is still the guaranteed scholarship that is a huge benefit for a college athlete who's not going to the NFL. And it's very hard to be able to get the courses squeezed in that you want if you are serious about your academic career in season. So being an early enrollee, that's an extra semester to really get ahead of the curve, to try to particularly knock out electives. We all remember in college where you had to take all those electives you hated your first 2 years before you could get into your major. And so this is a good time to do that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start. And what I'm going to do is, on our YouTube page, I'm going to start a poll based off of who Jimmy picks, who Caleb picks, and who I pick. So, Jimmy, let me start with you. Give me 2, 3, 4 guys that you think can benefit the most, and then your one guy that you would point to and say, that is the guy that needs spring practice and is a midterm enrollee and will have an impact because of that.
I'm going to start with the 5-star wide receiver, Mike Matthews. I think he's a guy that can come in and play right away. We saw in the, I guess it was a Polynesian Bowl, where he was MVP. And this offense, it's not extraordinarily complex with the routes and all this stuff, but they do a lot of reading. So you got to be able to read defenses. You got to be on the same page with your quarterback. And I think Matthews coming in early gives him a chance, because I do think there's an opening at wide receiver for somebody to come in and start. I'm going to expect that Boo Carter begins his career in the secondary. I don't know that for sure, but I think that's probably where he'll be. They're opening in the secondary. So I think coming in early gives him an opportunity to play a lot. I don't know about starting, but to at least play a lot. I would also look, and look, there's so many people to choose from on that list.
Yes.
I would go with I'm going to say the tight end stays from Notre Dame. Tennessee needs help at the tight end position because they lost 2 good ones. And the tight end position at Tennessee, it's tight end position in general is hard to play. You got to be able to block, you got to be able to catch, and then you play some H-back. So I think that Stays coming in early will help him as far as adjusting to a position of need and adjusting to a position that I think is hard to play.
All right, let's go with you, Caleb. Who do you think? If you had to pick a couple and then you're one, I'm going to take one of Jimmy's. He mentioned Boo Carter, so I'm going to go ahead and take that one. And I've got Mike Matthews on the board. Who else in terms of midterm enrollees will benefit the most from spring camp heading into the 2024 season? Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason. Andy Mason, realestate.com. And Andy Mason has the best service, best prices in the biz, over 40 years right there in Knoxville. Can't beat that. Caleb, what do you got for me, buddy?
Just so y'all know, to our listeners, I was supposed to go second, but then when Dave heard Jimmy mention Boo Carter, he decided to go second so he could mention Boo Carter to make sure I couldn't mention Boo Carter because I was going to mention Boo Carter. Okay.
I've been told, and Caleb and I have talked about it. Now, the recruiting promises are just that, but that he's been pretty much promised a great shot at starting at strong safety. So I know recruiting talk, but that's why I picked Boo. Sorry to take that.
All right.
It sounds like Dave's promises are just that too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So I actually am going to, and this is on the fly. This is me, Peyton Manning style, audibling at the line of scrimmage with 5 seconds left on the play clock.
Omaha.
Yes, exactly. I was a jazz pianist in high school, all state, so I can improv pretty good. But not to.
By the way, let's ask Peyton Manning what he thinks of stealing the Omaha that we just did.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Oh, whoa! Hey, what in the world?
Right.
So, but actually, in all seriousness, one guy that did just come to my mind was Payton Lewis. And with Jalen Wright gone, I believe Jabari Small is gone too, right? He's not coming back. And I know everybody's talking about Dylan Sampson, but there's 2 issues. One, we don't know if Dylan Sampson can be a feature back or if he's more of just an all-purpose back to gain a lot of yards. And 2, Dylan Sampson's been in the program for 2 years and still hasn't learned how to pass block. And I'm like, again, that's more about will, I feel like, at this point than, I mean, no one's so incompetent that I've never heard of a running back not being able to pick up pass block within like 3 months of being in the program. So I'm thinking those 2 things, there's a real opening for a feature back. And Payton Lewis coming in, if he can pick up pass blocking, I think the spring is the perfect time for him to do that. He could easily become the starter in the fall, guys. I don't think it'd be shocking to see Payton Lewis be the starting running back in September.
Jim, thoughts?
I would actually be surprised if he's starting running back because of Sampson. I agree with you on Sampson's inability in pass protection. The other thing that hurts Sampson, I don't know what they list him at. He looks like he's $180. That's not very big if you're trying to block a 220-pound linebacker that's blitzing. But he does need to improve in that regard. I think they would go with the veteran there. I do think Payton Lewis eventually, and I don't really know how good he is. I know how good they say he is, but I would be surprised if he started. I would not be surprised to see him get quite a bit of action early in the year. And to Caleb's point, a lot of it's going to be predicated on how well he does in pass protection. One of the best running back pass protectors I saw at Tennessee was Jalen Hurd. Now, one reason he was so good at it was he was so big, which is, to me, the disadvantage that Sampson has right now.
I agree with that. So let's tweak it into this. What high school midterm enrollee? Because I think we all expect for Hurd and Moy to have an impact, and they're supposed to be there as well. So it is on our YouTube page right now. What midterm high school enrollee will get the most out of spring camp? Mike Matthews, Boo Carter, Payton Lewis, and Jake Merklinger. There we go.